thought about it as I was writing the book, not that that information was coming to me, that maybe I'm remembering what happened during the NDE, that I was remembering all this because I don't remember getting a life review, having a life review. I was taken to the water planet, but I don't remember having any kind of a life review. So I may have been remembering more of my NDE as I through my out of body experiences, through my meditations, through my awarenesses throughout my day, that type of thing. And I mentioned that in the book. That's when it was coming to me afterwards, because that was the full breadth of the NDE. That was a lot to bring through.
Today, I'd like to welcome back to the show a dear friend, a previous guest, and now officially an author, Sharon Sananda Kumara. Welcome back to Conscious Conversations.
Oh, thank you, Christina. As always, it's a pleasure to be here and to sit here and chat with you again. Thank you.
Yes, yes. Now, this I think is the third time that you've been on the show, and we've already talked about your near-death experience. We talked about a different book that you collaborated with other near-death experiencers, but today we're going to talk about your book, which was just recently published in June. Is that correct?
June 21st. Yes,
the
right
summer
here. I have it right here. If you can see it.
Yeah.
Awakened Soul.
Awakened Soul. Yeah. So I read this book over the weekend and I was hooked from the start, even though I've already had so many conversations with you about your journey. It was like I was reading it again for the first time. And I'm not just saying this, like, I don't read. So for it to captivate me is like a huge, huge deal for me. But the thing that I want to start with as we discuss your journey, your amazing journey, and your book that documents your journey. The thing that felt the most impactful was that I literally felt like it was healing me, like I was being healed as I was reading your experiences, your insights, your journal entries. I mean, just all of it. I just felt like it was speaking to me, even though my experiences were not the same. And I just want to know, how did you manage to do that in your book?
Well, thank you for saying that, first of all. And you're not the first person who has told me that. And so I'm so happy that that energy was there with my book. And I can say that it's 10 years in the making, and I've been writing it for quite a long time. And when I began putting it together in book format, I was actually healing as I was writing it. I was healing more, I should say. More things were coming to me, more energy was coming to me, and Yeshua was there with me the whole time. So I would hazard a guess that, not guessing really, but I'm sure that Yeshua was there. You were feeling him there as well. And when you have those writings that touch you and you feel the energy of the masters, I guess I could say, or the love that's coming through. There it is, the love that's coming through. It's that you can't make that up.
No, you can't. I did. I felt the love that you felt in his arms during your near-death experience. And what I love about the book itself is that the near-death experience was such a small portion of it, because most of your book was about what happened after. And in every out-of-body experience you had, in every dream, when you talked about your time working with Yeshua, like I just felt it as if I was experiencing it. And it was just so beautiful, so beautifully written. And the energy in the book is undeniably coming from pure love, for sure.
Thank you. Thank you. Yeah, that was my intention. And my intention is to help as many as possible with it, to find the Christ within them, which is Yeshua's intention, of course. And it's not, I will say, it's not a religious book, and it has a lot of metaphysical experiences in it, which Yeshua helped me heal through what we would call metaphysical healing modalities. That, we don't normally know about in religion and religious circles of healing.
Yeah. And I'm so glad that you mentioned so many other metaphysical experiences and how Yeshua helped you, because there were a couple of chapters that specifically touched on how you, I'm going to try to put it in the words that you did, but how you, with your past lives, you helped your soul in this experience by retrieving and helping the soul retrieval. I don't want to mess it up. So I'd love it if you could talk about those pieces from your story, because I just find them so fascinating. And I even had the experience, like, maybe I need to do that with some of my past lives.
Well, I would say we probably all do at some point, or else we might not be here. We come here, what I've learned is we come here to heal what keeps us from remembering who we really truly are. That's part of the journey, right? And to heal the traumas that we haven't healed in other life experiences. And he helped me remember that. But yeah, it started out with him with, it's a journey where things just started falling into place for me with soul retrieval, past life soul retrieval. And he guided me to be able to do this work on my own after I was able to clear many lifetimes with him and the experiences that he brought to me. But one in particular was during the Civil War, where I lost my children and a brother. And so that was very profound. And during my out-of-body experiences, I was brought to her to help her. And her husband stayed with her in that lifetime, and he was a minister. And so me, that part of me, was racked with guilt with losing her children. She felt responsible and racked with guilt because she was very religious, and her husband was very, fire and brimstone religious. And there's so much I didn't include in the book, which there is an awakened soul too. But but that was really profound for me when he helped me with that in so many ways, and how I was able also to retrieve my little boy. Ooh, feel that one. And which was, mind-blowing for me. The whole thing was just so mind-blowing and basically soul shattering. You have to shatter things in order to dive in and figure out why we are the way we are.
Yeah, we can't really, I always use this analogy with my clients that, in order to take a messy closet to an organized closet, you got to pull all of whatever's in the closet out, and it's a huge mess until you get it reorganized. So I completely understand. And there was another instance in the book where you were talking about past lives and recall of past lives, where you were a princess and your mother was a queen, I believe, and
a queen regent.
Yes. And what I loved about that chapter was how it really demonstrated and illustrated some of our karma and how we resolve our karma. And I would love it if you could share either a little bit about that experience or just talk about how, karma works in general.
Yeah. So, well, I'll start off with, I didn't remember my childhood in this life. And then with Yeshua working with me, I remembered there was abuse in my childhood, and I started remembering the soul that had that role in this lifetime that we went through. And the reason I chose that experience with him again was so that I could heal the initial experience in that lifetime you just brought up. And what happened in that lifetime was my mother was a queen regent, and it was in Italy, in a community there. And my grandfather, her father, was too sick to rule, so my mother did, and we ended up throwing Christians to the lions, that type of thing, for sport. And there was a male who wanted to marry me, and he was the same soul that was abusing me in this lifetime, that took that role in this lifetime. So he wanted to marry me, so he get in the family, that kind of thing. And then we ended up getting married, and he right away he takes over and throws my mother and I to the lions. So that was the karmic loop that was supposed to be closed in that lifetime, where we were doing it then. And so that happened to us. We chose that experience in that lifetime. But unfortunately, it was so traumatic for me and my mother too. She was stuck there as well. And what's interesting is the lions were too, because they were totally abused. So they were stuck in that experience with us. And so he helped me to take me back to the crux. I call it the crux of the pattern and the repeating pattern that I had brought forward and chose to bring forward so that I could heal it. And so I retrieved that part of me and my mother, which was my mother in this lifetime as well.
Yes.
And the animals too. And they came with us as soon as he helped me retrieve those soul aspects. The animals were starved and abused as well. So, they and I write a chapter about animals and soul retrieval, that they can get, it's unusual, but they can get traumatized. They usually stay with people. And I had a dog of mine that stayed with me in a couple of lifetimes that I remembered in different forms.
Yeah, thank you so much for sharing that. And what I found so interesting was that in that lifetime, when you all signed up to close this karmic loop. And what stood out the most was when you wrote that it was too traumatic. Like the emotions were so intense, and it really popped open my awareness that, oh, there might be karmic loops that feel so traumatic in this lifetime that I can't close it up. And so I'm curious, like, if there's any kind of, because this is what I've been thinking about since I read that part was, how do we take that information into this lifetime? How do we, help ourselves, our lives, our past lives? Like, how can we use that information to really heal and close those karmic loops so that we don't continue to suffer?
Right. Yeah. Well, it's all about remembering, memory, that type of thing. And so, what he helped me remember, we say we come here to learn things. I find that we just come here to remember, and that's how we learn, right? Because we're remembering. We're learning to remember. And so he helped me understand that we're so distracted from going into our soul, from diving into our soul. And that's where all the answers are. And we can access our records at any time. But we're not, normal Western society that's not fostered, right? But luckily we're moving in that direction, with you and I and so many people that are waking up or becoming awakened souls, right?
Yes.
So I teach classes on it. But hey, shameless plug here. I'm teaching a class on this Sunday on past life soul retrieval. I should remember that. But it's 21st. And so what we can do is just in our meditations, ask our guidance, is there any lifetime that needs to be cleared, need to be healed? And see what comes up, and always trust what we get. Because after I started doing this work with him, things were coming up pretty fast and furious. And we used to know how to do this. We just forgot. So it's one tool to help us integrate fragmented parts of ourselves, because we do this already in in modern psychology, where we bring in fragmented parts of our personality aspects in our current life, but we don't look at other lifetimes.
Yeah.
And, you know, when you look at it from a 40,000 foot view, everything's current, right?
Yeah.
We're just down here in this frequency of seeing it from our limited scope. So everything's current.
Yeah. Yeah. I want to highlight what you said, because I just found it to be so profound that we come here to remember who we are, the truth of who we are, which is the entire intention of this whole podcast. To help others remember and return to the truth of who we are. And what I loved about how you said it, you said that, you know, we just need to dive deep into our souls. And, you know, so many of us are, I know, until I got, you know, sober and started getting into recovery, that like I had no self-awareness. I was unwilling actually to look at myself for anything. And when we do the turn inwards, do the inner work, that is where we start to experience freedom. So yes, just like psychology, we do it on the surface level, right? But diving deep to that inner part of us is really what's going to set us free. So right. Yeah, again, just I was blown away by your book, and just there's so much I can talk about. I'm like, let me stick to my list. Okay, well that's actually a great segue, because the next part, this is something that I don't think you and I have talked about before, which was when you saw the Matrix. That was one chapter. And then when you were talking with a friend or a family member about it, she confirmed that, you know, that's what she was aware of too. So I'd love it if you can tell us about when you saw the Matrix. Obviously, sure. You can read about it in her book, but we can also hear a little bit about it here.
Sure. Well, I went to the grocery store in the middle of the night, which is very unusual for me, because as I explained in the book, I was agoraphobic at night. I couldn't go out by myself at night. It's just something that I couldn't do. I didn't know why. I just knew that I have anxiety, and I share a lot of anxiety and panic attacks in the book, kind of thing. And I'm in there happy as a clown because I actually made it alive to the grocery store at 10:30 at night or whatever it was. I'm like, I did it. Yes. And the people around me and the scene around me disappears, and I see the blue-green grid lines. I'm like, and it was 3 seconds or so, which is long enough for me to realize that this is actually the matrix I'm looking at, or grid lines I'm looking at, and everything disappeared. And then as soon as I got that awareness of what I'm looking at, then the projection, I guess you could say, reappears. During this time, of course, I'm thinking all the time I'm going crazy, you know. I don't know what's going on. I'm just, you know, things are happening. Like the year of 2003 is the year of the crazy year, I guess you could say, when a lot of this was going on. And so when I moved from Texas, this was in Texas, when I moved from Texas back to Oregon, home, where I was born and raised in Oregon, I talked to my cousin, who we always thought of a hippie. She was, you know, one of those people. And I was raised in a Catholic background, with a Catholic background. So she was the outcast, sort of, kind of, you know, the hippie person who went around traveled with the communes and stuff. And I thought she was really cool. She's older than me. So I was telling her we reunited, and I was telling her about no, I take that back. She told me about her experience, because I hadn't told anyone. I'm like, I can't tell anyone this. And she tells me, because I was waking up to stuff, but she tells me that she was in her room and she saw a matrix in her room all around her. And I said, oh my God, I can't believe that, because I saw the same thing in a grocery store, of all places. And it was just so confirming for me that maybe I'm not as crazy as I thought I was, but yeah. And now, of course, people are talking about, and then the movie The Matrix, was out. I'm not sure when that was made, or if I hadn't even seen it. I can't even remember. But yeah. So, and there's books about holographic reality. I've been in many instances recently where I'm driving down the freeway and I have this awareness where everything around me is a hologram. And I'm just really sitting still. But I'm telling myself I'm driving down the freeway, that I'm moving down the freeway, and there's cars around me. There's a truck here. There's people on maybe the side of the road or whatever. I'm telling myself that, but really I'm in one space projecting. We're all projecting things. We have a combined projection, and then we're personal projections. So
I'm like, it's just so fascinating. I haven't had where I see it like the movie, or, where I see greens or blacks, but I have been in meditations, open-eyed meditations, and I've started to see grids. And
wow.
it's
Yeah.
so fascinating to me. And it's like, I'm curious if, you ever asked, or if Yeshua has ever shared, like, why is it like that? Why are we in a matrix? Why are we in a simulation?
Oh, well, I've had a lot of conversations about why we're in a matrix. Yeah, this it's kind of like a computer game, but it's more level up. It was, our realities are created. There's all kinds of answers I get about it, and it just, as I dive deeper and deeper, it's holographic because how do I put it? It's all mathematics. The universe is mathematics, and yeah, and energy. Everything's energy, and it's, well, Tesla. What did he say? Everything. When you want to understand the nature of the universe, think of frequency and vibration. We are master creators, and master creators have creators.
Yeah.
On some level have created these realities. And it makes sense that they would be holographic.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
It really does, because
yeah.
we're multidimensional.
Yeah. Yeah. And so much is making sense right now. So you wrote in your book, and I know this because of our, connection, and but you had mentioned in your book that you had read A Course in Miracles. And I love A Course in Miracles. I've studied it for 12 years. I do the lessons every day. And what we've been talking about recently in the lessons, about 90 to I'm at 105 right now, is the truth and the illusion. And during one of the morning meditations that I did the other day, as I was repeating the mantra, and the entire lesson was about, truth and illusion can't exist in the same place, right? Like,
Right,
illusion
right.
is not real. And I don't even know what happened, but I just had this vision of like it being like a video game. And I was like, I've never seen it like that before. Like, it had a visual, right? Like, my eyes were closed, so I wasn't seeing it like in real life like a video game, but my eyes were closed and I could see how, it was like, oh, this is the path, and like we get distracted. And our higher self is like, this way is God's will for you, and then but our higher self doesn't mind if we go and explore in other areas of the game.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah.
It's true. When you think about it, when you dive in, and it makes so much sense, because I believe that the most important thing we can do is for our soul is soul growth. Like you were saying, to know our soul, to know who we are and what we are, type of thing, know ourselves. And this matrix was set up with so many distractions, which is fine. That sooner or later, we're infinite. Since we are infinite, sooner or later, we'll make the choice to, have change our priorities. Doesn't mean that we can't have fun in this matrix, but the not but and the rub is that the matrix is kind of rigged to keep us distracted and in a fear-based type of frequency, a lower frequency, although things are getting better, of course, because there's so many of us and we're being bombarded with light all the time. But where we are going, we've talked about this, we're going through that type of detox thing where everything that's even talks about this in the Bible, that everything that's been hidden is coming to the surface. So to be cleansed, just like with us. And that's what happens when we dive in is, like you said, things come to the surface to be, they come out of the darkness into the light. And that's what's happening with humanity now, because we've been in the dark too long.
Yeah.
It's time.
Yes. It's time. And I have another question about that, because you do talk about time and you talk about how you were shown the future. But before we go further, I just want to clarify for the listeners that your NDE happened in 2001, and this is all explained in the book, but the NDE was in 2001, and all of these things that we've been talking about have happened after the NDE. Mm-hmm. And so what a gift. In the NDE, you meet Jesus, and then Jesus comes and, guides you through all this, stuff that isn't really crazy, but for someone who wasn't exposed to it can feel out there. Or...
It can feel like you're losing your mind. Yeah. We were talking about this was the aftermath, and I call it the aftermath, definitely. But I thought about it as I was writing the book, not that information was coming to me, that maybe I'm remembering what happened during the NDE. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. That I was remembering all this because I don't remember having a life review. I was taken to the water planet, but I don't remember having any kind of a life review. So I may have been remembering more of my NDE as through my out-of-body experiences, through my meditations, through my awarenesses throughout my day, that type of thing. I don't know. Mm-hmm. I just know that that's when, and I mentioned that in the book, that's when it was coming to me afterwards, because if that was, since we all are in one time anyway, if that was the full breadth of the NDE, that was a lot to bring through in, just in one download.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. And I love how you just said that, because what you had mentioned about time is what I've learned about time, that, time actually isn't linear. It's not real, right? It's used to give us, things to check in on, right? Like it can guide us to, making choices or showing up to, I think you said, showing up to appointments that are for, mm-hmm. Enriching my life or your life. And there was an instance where you were trying to calm down from a panic attack. So you were in a field, and even in your book, you said, this is not linear, because that didn't happen linearly. And I'm just curious, because you also said that you were, shown the future. So I guess there's not really much of an actual question other than just, I'm really curious to hear more about what you have to say about time and, the past and the future, and how it kind of is all just right now anyways.
Yeah. Well, I do believe that we use time here, that we're meant to use time, or we should use time as a tool, right? The clocks were created so we could use it as a tool. I should say we should use it as a tool. Now, they may have been created to keep us enslaved within the time matrix, which I kind of feel they were, but who knows? When we were in tune with nature and the planets and the sun and the moon and things like that, that's what we use to chronicle time, is the seasons, the moon phases, the sun, following the sun, the stars, all of that. So we would use that as our guide. And then the clock was created. He helped me understand to use it as a tool, and I get that, not to be stuck in it, having to worry about time. Mm-hmm. As far as past, present, and future, once we leave the mindset of the time matrix, is what he showed me, and disconnect from that. Don't, stop looking at the clock, stop worrying about it. When we are maybe on vacation, we don't have to worry about the clock or anything like that. That's when we're in that place of no time, where everything is in sync, and we're not worried about whether it's dinner time, or we're not worried about, anything, appointments and stuff like that, or concerned or have to be in that space. Because, when we're doing something we really love, time goes really fast. You're like, wow, that was an hour already. I thought it was just 5 minutes. And the opposite is true, of course. That just goes to show us that time is an illusion.
When I was reading those parts, it was like I could see, like, my vision was opening as I was reading your book, because I could see both sides, right? Like, when we're in the present moment, if we're concerned about what time it is or what's next, or, when we're going to pay that bill, or, all those things, we're not actually in the present moment, and we're not appreciating like what's actually here right now.
Right. Good point.
But, I did see, like, also when you were talking about like the cycles and the moons, and it's like, and the enslavement that time is used to, kind of keep us enslaved here. I saw how time can be easily put in place of God. Like, we worship time, 8 hours a day, right? We have to go to bed at a certain time so we can wake up at a certain time so we can be at work at a certain time, and breakfast should be at 8 a.m. and lunch should be at noon, and so
Right.
it really takes us away from being in tune with
nature,
cycles,
with our cycles. Yeah.
Yes.
And that's the program that's the program that's been instilled in us, right? That we have to work a 9 to 5, or we have to do this, or we have to have breakfast at this time, or bake eggs and bacon for breakfast. Just, that's it. I want to eat cheesecake for breakfast, okay? And I'm okay with that. All right. I'm breaking the program. All right. So
when I started, when I had kids, when they were younger, and I realized, wait, I'm an adult and I can set the rules. Like, sometimes we have ice cream for dinner.
There you go. Yes.
Like,
break the program.
Right.
Yeah. It's okay. It's okay. Yeah. I will say one thing I didn't mention, Christina, is that in terms of time, he taught me some tools to manipulate time.
I was just going to ask you. That was my next question, because I know you shared the stretching time before with me personally, but I would love to hear what Yeshua taught you about that.
Yes. Well, he taught me a couple of things, but the one I'll share is when I was going to miss an connection on a flight, an airplane flight, and there was no way that I was going to make it because our plane was late. The connection was like 5-10 minutes, I guess, and it was at Dallas Fort Worth, DFW. And so he showed me. He said, "Okay, relax, take some deep breaths, and speed up in your mind, getting off the plane, getting deboarding, getting to the gate. Speed it up. See yourself in your mind doing this very quickly, running down the tram or whatever to get there." Speed that up in your mind. Put that whole scenario in your mind and do that, and then slow down the other end. Slow down the gate. Envision it where everything is real slow. The people are boarding real slow. And it worked.
Yeah.
Hmm.
Yeah.
I made it. And there's no way I would have made that flight without doing that. It's just no way.
Yeah. Yeah. That is so cool. I know you've shared something similar with me in the past, and I did that once when I was traveling,
Yeah,
and it worked.
it worked. Yeah,
Yeah,
it
we're
does
so
work.
powerful. We are
Hmm.
so powerful. And when we really grasp, like you've been able to see it, but when we really grasp that this is, a hologram, and while we feel like we're driving down the street, but we're really in one place, when we grasp that as truth, and we can, see that it's all in the mind, it's like we are beyond powerful. We can't even
Totally,
conceive, I think, of how powerful we are.
totally.
There were so many synchronicities in your book. I loved how one of the things that really just grounded it in for me were how you put journal entries that you had taken and how they all lined up. So there's a specific story about, and I don't know if you want to talk about this, but it was about finding your son.
Mm,
And
sure.
the synchronicities in there, I literally cried.
Yeah, that was powerful. Mhm.
Yeah. Would you share about that?
Sure. There were so many. Hopefully I can remember them all. But when I was 16, I got pregnant and I had a child at 17, and ended up giving him up for adoption. I wasn't, I was not at this place where I could have raised a child. And so I lived with my parents. We decided to give him up for adoption. Okay, I didn't know it was a boy until I went to sign the adoption papers and saw a baby boy on the paperwork. All right. What is it? 2003. Oh, how many? 30 years later, 20 something years later. After my NDE, I start dreaming about I hear a male voice singing, and he's singing, "I'm looking for you and I can't find you." Over and over in my dreams. It just kept happening. And at the time, I was working with another guide of mine. Her name was Lila, and she helped me with earth stuff. And she shows up in Out of My Experience, and I had my intention to ask her this question: who's singing to me? This is bugging me. Why do every time I'm in a dream or in an experience, I hear a male singing? I'm trying to find you and I can't find you. I don't understand it because my family swept it under the rug. We didn't talk about it. It just went on with life, kind of thing. I repressed it. We went on with life. I never really wanted to try to find him because I didn't want to mess up his life, although he was always tucked into my heart, of course. And so she asked me, guidance would do that. If you ask a question, a lot of times they'll answer with a question. She said, "Did you graduate from high school?" I'm like, that's a strange answer. Okay. And I thought no, and then I came back to my body, and then it hit me as soon as she asked me that question. I did not graduate from high school because I was pregnant, and I'm like, oh my gosh, that is my son, and the dam broke. Okay, so that happened, and then I thought, okay, well, I got to see if I can find him, and I started looking for him online, and this was again in 2002, I think, or somewhere around there. Might have been 2003, but I think it was 2002. I didn't know where he was born. He was born in Oklahoma. I lived in Texas. So what I did was I wrote letters to all the hospitals in Oklahoma, in the city in Oklahoma, telling them my story. And a nurse, a couple weeks later, I guess it was, I get the hospital records from the hospital, and she was a nurse, and she went through microfiche to find my records from 1976. Yeah. And I mean, wow, who does that? So then I had a birth date. I had that. I had a birth date. She's an angel. I had a birth date. So, because I didn't remember the exact date, I just knew it was between 16 and 17, and my family didn't remember the exact date either. So I went online to a online group that matches up, birth parents and birth children that are looking for them, and put some information out there on that, just said I was looking for my son. And right away, I get an email from a woman who lived in the city that he was born, and says, I'd like to help you find your son if you'd care for me to. And she said that she found her birth mother, and she's a stay-at-home mom. She has a baby, and she wants to help. And I said, oh, great, thank you. How much do I owe you? She goes, I don't charge anything. So she told me to go to the DMV, yes, DMV of Oklahoma, and put in that birth date and find a list of people that may have a driver's license with that birth date. So I did that. It was, I don't know, less than $100, $70-something. I did that. I got 25 pages back, and I sent them over to her. She said, just send it to me and I'll do the work, because I was working. Right? She takes it that night, and she's what she tells me. She looks at it, prints it out, looks at it, flips over, and says, oh, I think I'll call this one. Oh, and by the way, I was having out-of-body experiences where I got that he was in Montana, and he didn't have any children, and he was a mama's boy, and he had a sister he was close to, that he lived in Montana. Okay. She flipped it over. She calls this phone number, and a young man answers the phone, and she says, I'm helping a woman who is looking for her birth son that she gave up for adoption on this, in this date, or he was born this date. She was, this happened to be you? He goes, yeah, I was adopted. And anyway, she had that conversation with him, and she said, it turns out to be him, and it was on his birthday that she called him. And he was actually staying with his parents, but he lived in Montana with his cousin, who was like a sister to him. And he doesn't have any children. Yeah, never been married, didn't have any children. So he said, yeah, I'd love to talk to her, and that he was looking for me. And then I called him, and we were reunited. There's just so much divine intervention there. Am I leaving anything out? I can't remember.
You know what? If you are, that's okay, because everyone can go buy the book.
There you go. Buy the book. Yes.
And read it, because yeah, I mean, and what I loved is that, after you explained that in the book, you wrote down and listed all the synchronicities. And so even when there were times, and I'm skeptical, but I'm also a believer, right? So even if there was a moment where I was like, well, that's so crazy, as I was reading your book, it was like, there you had the documentation of like your journal entries and, different things. And I'm curious, as you were writing your journal entries, was that just something you were doing for you, or did you do it for the book?
Oh, no. I never, when I was going through it, I never ever thought I would be writing a book. That wasn't anything that came to mind. I was doing it for me. And that's one of the top 3 things that Yeshua told me I need to do is journal, get it out. That's how we dive in, is through our journals, and how we get to know ourselves and deepen our connection with our guidance as well. And so yeah, I was just journaling whatever was going on. I'm journaling my dreams, my out of bodies, my thoughts, my experiences,
Yeah.
conversations with him, with my guidance.
I have to say, I'm not a big journaler, right? Like I journal for certain things if it's assigned to me, but I don't document this stuff. And I'm inspired to, start noting synchronicities and dreams that I have. Like I've had premonitions, many.
Yeah.
But I've never written anything down. And so completely inspired to start, writing things
Good.
down and, seeing where they align and seeing where they're leading me, because your book is such a huge example of how a practice like that can really help us dive into our souls and experience
Right.
healing
Right.
and that freedom for sure.
Yeah.
So,
Thank you.
yeah.
Well, good. I'm glad that helped you with that and inspired you, because
Yes.
it's just so amazing how it helps.
Chapter 33 with Mary Magdalene.
Yes.
I'd love it if you would share about what you saw and experienced about Mary Magdalene. What was
Sure.
revealed to you about her?
Sure. Yeah, I was a little nervous about that. And there's a few things I was nervous about writing about in my book, as you can imagine. But I'm like, you know what? I'm just going to do it. And hopefully it will help somebody. And back then it wasn't common knowledge like it kind of is now. But I was in meditation with Yeshua in the beginning when we started meditating. And I will say that I made a commitment with him when I was conscious of him working with me, that I would be in my room every night at 9 p.m. sitting with him in meditation. And yeah, so I honored that. And he honored his agreement with me that we had on the other side during the NDE. Of course, 100-fold. But so I'm sitting in meditation. And I'm taken into a scene. I just shift. And I'm taken into a scene where I recognize him as Yeshua during the time he walked the planet. And I know in my mind that I'm Mary Magdalene. I just know it. I'm seeing through her eyes. I'm not saying I am her. I'm saying I'm seeing through her eyes. Okay. And I feel that we all have, she's, there's so many people that align with her and have memories of being in her body. And that's a whole other story that I believe about. But, and so I'm seeing through her eyes, and he's falling a tree. He's chopping down a tree. And I'm there with lunch or a meal. And I'm carrying it in like a bag tied to around my waist. And we sit down on the tree that he just fell. And we're eating, and I know that I just have this complete love for him. Right. And he reaches over to me and he kisses me in a romantic way. And I'm like, whoa, I pull myself out of the meditation. What is going on here?
Yeah.
And he says very gently, just go back in, just be with it. Just be with it. And I did. And we were together as, I'm going to say husband and wife type of thing. I have those memories. I have, and how do you talk about that? I remember that there was children around a lot, and that we had children. And I have many memories of walking with him. I didn't share all of them, but where I'm just standing there watching him with children, sitting out in front of our place that we lived in with children, and I just am so in love with him, and so this feeling of pure love that I had for him and he had for everyone. When he'd walk around, everyone was just so affected, like now, and always will be so affected by him. Everyone was in love with him. And I don't, you know what I mean? Everyone is in love with him because he exudes. That's who he is. I mean, it took him a little while to get there, of course. I mean, he did his work.
Yes.
Yeah, for sure. But he was just so full of just pure love, and he loved being with children. And yeah, it was amazing. He had, I recall he's had his challenges, and there was some experiences with that.
Yeah.
Well, duh, he was crucified.
Right.
That's a challenge.
I know. I was just gonna say, that amount of love,
yeah,
cannot be denied, right? When you're walking around as healed, as connected to source, as pure light, as pure love, and you're not judging anybody. I mean, who
right.
would not be, I want that energy around me, right? Like how many years later, whether, whatever, 2000 years later, we're still in love with Jesus.
Yes, we are. Then it will never, ever go away.
Yeah. And what I love about that is that, and you mentioned that there was a moment, and I think it might have been, actually, I don't know, but in your book, I remember reading that you had a moment where he reminded you that you guys are one and that you had merged.
Yes.
Yeah.
That was the wedding.
Yeah.
The wedding. Yeah. And how I took the name, because I wasn't given it, I earned it. Sharon Sananda Kumara. Remember the name Sharon Sananda Kumara. And we sat there face to face in Lotus, and he took my hands and said, it was after the wedding, the high dimensional wedding. And I'm not going to talk about that because I think people should read it because it's just so profound. Yeah, it's so profound. And he says, yes, we are one. Mm-hmm. And he asked me if I wanted to take that name. And I said, yes, oh my gosh, yes, I'll use that name. And he said, we'll take it all the way to the Godhead. So that frequency is recognized of Sharon Sananda Kumara all the way to the Godhead.
Yeah.
That's what yeah.
Yeah. Oh, that's just, everything about your book. I'm just like, I was just lit up, and I'm not making this up. Like I don't read, I do pick up books. I have a lot of books, and other than the Course in Miracles, like I start reading it and I put them down, and it wasn't just my commitment to reading it before this podcast. Like I really dove in. And, back to how we're all just so, mesmerized by Jesus really is that, while some of us have a lot of things that we can heal and work through, in the bigger truth I always call them truths with a capital T, we are all one. So what we're seeing in Jesus is what is actually something that we have and can.
Yes.
And yes. I know from what you wrote in your book, and it's close to, my background, we were brought up with, Jesus and the saints and all of these holy people as something we can never attain, that they were so far out of reach, but that's not actually true.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. He teaches us that he embodies God. He embodied that in his physical form, and he embodies that, and he appears to us because we recognize him that way to whoever, but God embodies all of us, or we embody all of it, love. And there's something about that in my book where Yeshua helped me understand that. What God is, but yes, we have that within us. That's who we are, and that's what we are, is love and light. And he was able to embody that in that lifetime to help us remember who we are.
Yeah.
Ooh, I feel that.
And he does that also you mentioned The Way of Mastery in your book and A Course in Miracles, and he works with us one-on-one.
Yeah.
If I ask, he will show up.
That's right.
And teach.
Yeah.
So,
and a lot of people learn about him through the Bible too, the New Testament and that. I'm not a huge Bible reader, so I can't attest to that, but I'm sure, obviously there's a lot of people that connect with him through the Bible,
Yeah.
which is, awesome. It's
Yeah.
what it's meant for, as long as it doesn't exclude
Right.
other beliefs. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, Sharon, I could talk about your book forever, but I don't want to give away too much because I want people to, go and read
Yes,
all the
please go read
amazing
it.
things that
Awakened
you
Soul, My Near-Death
document.
Journey Home Through Christ's Infinite Love. There it is.
Yeah.
And this is basically how I saw him with the waters of the world, the water world, which we didn't even talk about, but
Yeah.
that's okay. We talked about that before.
Yes. If you want to hear about Sharon's NDE, there is a whole episode where that's all we talk about. And so I will link that in the description of the show. Before we close, Sharon, is there anything that you really wanted to share about anything, really? Your book, your NDE, or just anything in general that you'd like to share to anyone who's listening to this?
Oh gosh. Well, I shared quite a bit in my book, but book number 1, I will say, yeah, I guess, just remember that everything's going to be okay. If if anyone's struggling, just remember it's going to be okay. You can get on the other side of it. If I could get on the other side of what I went through 20 something years ago and be as somewhat balanced as I am now, then it's, it's going to be okay. Everything's going to be okay. And you have Christ there. You have source there to help you. You have your guidance system to help you. You're never, ever, ever alone. We're never alone, ever. It may seem like it sometimes, but we're not. We just can't see them with our physical senses or glean them with our physical senses, but we're surrounded by so much love and help. We just have to ask.
Yes. And again, the way that we started this entire conversation is that by reading your book, I got a deeper sense of the truth. And it may not have been all of the stories or your experiences or the words, but that book, those words, everything about it is infused with love and light. And it is felt on every page.
Oh, thank you so much. Yeah. And that was my intention. And Yeshua helped tremendously with that. Yeah. You can I feel him in every page. I really do. I mean, the cover depicts him perfectly how I saw him. Yeah. It's hard to see right here, but.
And I want to share too that, on Saturday, as I was reading it, my heart was just so open and I was just so blown out. I even texted you how grateful I was for you to be in my life. And, I was spilling out love everywhere as I was reading it. So,
Awesome.
if any of this today has intrigued you, or if near-death experiences intrigue you, go check out Sharon's book. It's truly an amazing piece of art and love, and there's not even words to describe it. So
it's on Amazon.
Yes, I'll put the link here.
Okay, of course you will. Thank you, Christina. A pleasure as always.
Yes, thank you. Thank you for being so willing to have all these experiences in a time where no one talked about it and you would be considered absolutely crazy. And even if the book wasn't written then, it's okay because it's here now and we can hear it. So thank you for sharing all of your experiences with the world. I'm just so happy there are people like you that are helping the world return to the truth of who we are.
Oh, and ditto to you as well. Thank you for being here. You're a huge bright light. Thank you, Christina.
Thank you. I would like to personally thank you for tuning in to this episode. If you haven't already, please be sure to like this episode, subscribe to my channel, and turn on notifications so that you never miss a beat. And if you really resonated with this content, please share it with all of your friends so that collectively we can expand our consciousness. Have a very blessed week.